Welcome to Old School Sundays. I'm your host, Odell. Let's get into some history. The snow fell heavy that night in Edmonton, blanketing the field in white silence. Warren Moon stood under the lights, his breath visible in the cold, a champion in a land that wasn't his own. The crowd roared with pride, but he couldn't shake the truth. This wasn't where his dream was supposed to unfold. He should have been under NFL lights, not Canadian ones. Just a few years earlier, Moon had led the University of Washington to a Rose Bowl victory, torching defenses and rewriting records. But when the draft day came, the phone never rang. 32 teams looked past him. Not one questioned his talent, they questioned his skin. In a league that preached competition, opportunity came with a color code. So Warren crossed the border carrying a rocket arm and a quiet fury. In Canada, he didn't just survive, he dominated. He became a legend in exile, a quarterback proving every Sunday what the NFL refused to believe. Yet, even as he hoisted Grey Cups and broke records, one thought kept haunting him. Why did I have to leave my own country to play my position? And when he finally came home, he made the league pay for every doubt they ever had. By the time Warren Moon stepped onto the field at the University of Washington, he was already defying gravity. The Huskies had been searching for stability, a leader who could command a huddle, read defenses, and deliver with precision. What they got was something rarer, a quarterback who didn't flinch when the world told him he wasn't supposed to exist. Moon wasn't just talented, he was disciplined to the point of obsession. His footwork was military, his release, surgical. Teammates called him Cool Hand Moon because no matter the stakes, his heartbeat never changed. And by his senior year, he led Washington to the unthinkable, a Rose Bowl win over powerhouse Michigan. Under the Pasadena lights, he picked apart one of the toughest defenses in the nation, earning MVP honors. The scouts saw it, the media saw it, the country saw it. Everyone knew Warren Moon could play at the next level. Everyone except the people who made decisions. When draft day came, Moon waited by the phone, just like every other senior quarterback in America. First round, second round, third, nothing. By the 10th, he knew. It wasn't his ability that kept teams away, it was his skin. The NFL had long been a graveyard for black quarterbacks, a league where opportunity came color coded. Scouts whispered the same tired lines: great athlete, but can he lead? Smart, but not a natural passer. Maybe receiver, maybe safety. It wasn't an evaluation, it was erasure dressed as analysis. When the draft ended, not one of the 28 NFL teams even called. Not one. Warren had just led a major university to glory, but his resume carried an asterisk that had nothing to do with football. He didn't beg, he didn't rage, he just decided to take his talent somewhere that would value what America refused to see. If the NFL didn't believe in Warren Moon, maybe another country would. And soon, a plane ticket to the frozen north would become the first step in one of the greatest acts of defiance in football history. When Warren Moon boarded that plane to Canada in 1978, it wasn't a triumphant journey. It was exile, quiet, lonely, and heavy with the weight of injustice. He left behind the stadiums he dreamed of, the television lights he'd earned, and the country that taught him to love football. The NFL didn't think he was quarterback material, but north of the border, the Edmonton Eskimos saw something else: a field general with an arm that could cut through winter air. The CFL wasn't glamorous: smaller crowds, shorter fields, frozen turf. But for Moon, it was freedom. No coaches asking him to switch positions, no reporters doubting his intelligence, no gatekeepers holding the keys to opportunity. Just football, pure and unfiltered. And once he stepped on that field, the league had no idea what was about to hit it. Moon mastered the wide open Canadian game with surgical precision. His passes whistled through blizzards, threading between defenders like guided missiles. Edmonton became a dynasty overnight. 5 consecutive Grey Cups, a record that still feels impossible. By his third championship, they weren't calling him the black quarterback anymore. They were calling him the best quarterback, period. But behind the celebrations, Warren knew every throw carried a different weight. Each touchdown wasn't just a score, it was a statement, a reminder to the league back home that their rejection had created a monster. American football experts started whispering his name again, cautiously at first, then louder with every passing year. How could the NFL, the supposed pinnacle of the sport, Ignore a man who had turned a foreign league into his playground. Still, Warren stayed humble. He let his game do the talking, his record do the arguing. He built his resume brick by brick until even the most stubborn skeptics had to admit the truth. The NFL had made a mistake. And as the trophies piled up, the league that once dismissed him began to circle, quietly, cautiously, nervously, wondering if the man they sent away would come back to haunt them. They didn't have to wonder long, because Warren Moon was coming home, and this time, he was bringing the storm with him. By 1984, Warren Moon was a superstar in everything but name: 5 Grey Cups, countless records, and a legend that stretched from Vancouver to Montreal. The only thing missing was the one league that once told him he wasn't good enough. And now, that same league was begging him to come back. It was poetic justice and poetic irony. After years of silence, the NFL suddenly couldn't get enough of Warren Moon. Teams lined up with promises, contracts, and headlines about redemption. But Moon hadn't forgotten. He remembered the rejection letters, the condescension, the way they told him he could be anything except a black quarterback. Now they wanted to cash in on his name, the one he built in the code by himself. When the Houston Oilers came calling, they didn't just offer a job, they offered respect, or at least something that looked like it. The deal was historic: $5.5 million dollars over 5 years, the largest contract in NFL history at that time. For a man the league once ignored, that number was more than money, it was a reckoning. But when Moon arrived in Houston, he didn't walk into celebration. He walked into skepticism dressed as curiosity. The same coded questions resurfaced. Can he handle the NFL game? Can he read complex defenses? He's older now. Can he adapt? Reporters treated him like a foreign import, as if success in Canada didn't count. Moon smiled through it all, but deep down, he knew what they were really asking. Could a black quarterback truly command an NFL offense? The first few games weren't easy. The Oilers were rebuilding, the playbook was new, and the media waited for him to fail. Every interception was front page news, every win was an afterthought. But Warren didn't come back for applause. He came back for proof. He studied, he adjusted, and he started lighting up defenses just like he did in Edmonton. The same precision, the same patience, the same defiance. By the end of that first season, the whispers had quieted. The same men who once doubted him were now standing on the sidelines in awe, because Warren Moon wasn't just back in America, he was taking it over. And soon, he changed the way football was played forever. By the late 1980s, the NFL was evolving, but no one had ever seen anything like what Warren Moon and the Houston Oilers were about to unleash. The league was still built on ground and pound football: handoffs, clock management, and quarterbacks acting as game managers, not field generals. Then Moon arrived with a cannon arm, a fearless mind, and a system built to let him fly. They called it the run and shoot. To the rest of the NFL, it looked like chaos. To Warren Moon, it was liberation. 4 wide receivers, no tight ends, constant motion snap after snap. Moon read defenses like a surgeon with a stopwatch. He didn't just run plays, he conducted an orchestra of speed and space. In an era when a 3,000-yard passing season was elite, Moon started throwing for 4,000, even 5,000 yards. Defenses couldn't keep up. His spiral cut through the air like a warning shot to every old school coach who had ever said a black man couldn't run a complex offense. In 1990, he led the league with 4,689 passing yards, numbers that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. He made 6 straight Pro Bowls, turned Houston into a playoff contender, and became the face of a football revolution. The Oilers' offense wasn't just fast, it was futuristic. Warren Moon's deep ball became poetry in motion, the kind of perfection fans still talk about in slow motion decades later. But as he rose, so did the scrutiny. Critics didn't call him innovative like they did with white quarterbacks. They said he was reckless. When he celebrated, they said he was cocky. When he stayed silent, they called him aloof. Moon was rewriting the game, but the headlines still wanted to rewrite him. He was dominating a sport that had once denied him entry, and somehow it still wasn't enough. Because no matter how many yards he threw, how many defenses he humiliated, or how many records he shattered, Warren Moon still felt the cold echo of the league's old prejudice. The NFL loved his arm. They just didn't know how to love the man behind it. And soon, the pressure to stay perfect would cost him more than just sleep. It would test his soul. For Warren Moon, dominance came with a hidden cost. Every touchdown, every record, every Sunday victory wasn't just celebrated, It was scrutinized. He wasn't just a quarterback, he was a symbol, a test case for whether a black man could lead from the pocket in the NFL. Every mistake was magnified, every success qualified. He was playing football, but he was also fighting history. By the early 1990s, Moon had cemented himself as one of the league's elite. His numbers were staggering: back to back passing titles, Pro Bowl honors year after year, and a highlight reel that could fill an entire decade. He'd done everything the NFL once said he couldn't. But instead of peace, it brought him pressure. Unlike most quarterbacks, Warren didn't get to be human. He couldn't afford a bad throw, a quiet press conference, or a losing streak. Because for him, every setback was proof for someone else's prejudice. Teammates loved him, but the media often painted him as distant, a man too proud, too composed. They didn't understand that he wasn't cold, he was careful. In a league that had never fully embraced him, he had to protect himself at all times. When white quarterbacks showed confidence, they were called leaders. When Moon did the same, he was labeled arrogant. When others showed frustration, they were passionate. When he did, it was attitude. And still, he performed. He carried Houston into the playoffs, shattered franchise records, and outplayed quarterbacks the league loved to crown. But behind the numbers, the weight was starting to show. The constant demand to be perfect, not just as a player but as proof, began to wear on him. Every Sunday was a battle not just for a win, but for validation. Warren Moon had come home and conquered the very league that doubted him. But as his legacy grew, so did the double standard that shadowed it. Even at the height of his greatness, the whispers never stopped. Reminders that no matter how many yards he threw, he always be the man who had to leave his own country to play his position. And that realization would follow him all the way to Canton. By the time Warren Moon's career was winding down, the stat sheet didn't look real. More than 49,000 passing yards in the NFL, 9 Pro Bowls, an Offensive Player of the Year award. Seasons where he led the entire league in passing not once, but multiple times. He retired among the all time leaders in nearly every major quarterback category. And that's not even counting for what he did in Canada. If you combine his CFL and NFL numbers, Warren Moon threw for over 70,000 yards. 70,000. That's not a career, that's a body of work that stretches across borders and decades. But his legacy isn't just math, it's what those numbers did to a lie. Before Warren Moon, the story around black quarterbacks in pro football was always the same: not smart enough, not disciplined enough, or not natural leaders. The old guard said it quietly in scouting rooms and loudly in the media. Moon became living evidence that all of that was garbage. He wasn't the exception. He was the proof the rule was never real. After him came more chances, more patience, more belief. You don't get Doug Williams winning a Super Bowl and changing how the position is seen. You don't get Steve McNair carrying a franchise on his back. You don't get Randall Cunningham being allowed to be Randall Cunningham. You don't get Cam, Russ, Lamar, Mahomes, not the way you got them, without Moon forcing the door open and leaving it off the hinges. And the sport finally had to admit it. In 2006, Warren Moon was inducted into Canton Hall of Fame, first ballot, one of the greatest to ever grip a football. He also became the first black quarterback in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is still the only quarterback in both the Canadian Football Hall of Fame and the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No one else has that, nobody else has lived that. He was now officially recognized as legendary. But even in that gold jacket, standing on that stage, the question he carried his whole career never went away. The question this country still hasn't fully answered: why did he have to be believed? Here's the part the highlight reels never show. Warren Moon didn't start out as an NFL star. He started out as a problem the NFL didn't want to solve. He did everything right, and it still wasn't enough until he forced it to be. He had to cross a border, build a dynasty in another country, and come back with undeniable proof just to be allowed to do the job he was already better at than most of the men who were handed it. Yes, he made it. Yes, he rewrote record books. Yes, he walked into Canton and they had to clap for him. But don't confuse celebration with justice. Warren Moon didn't escape the system, he outlasted it. His career is a spotlight on an ugly truth the league still wrestles with every draft night. Talent doesn't always decide who gets believed, comfort does. And that's why his story still matters right now. Every time a young black quarterback is called raw, emotional, not a natural leader, you're hearing an echo of what they said about Warren Moon. Every time a dual threat quarterback is praised for his legs but doubted for his mind, you're watching the same battle get recycled in cleaner language. So when you see the big names today, the Jacksons, the Hurts, understand something. They're not just playing for rings, they're cashing in on equity somebody else paid for in blood, disrespect, and years in the cold. Warren Moon didn't just play quarterback, he proved who was allowed to. If you enjoyed this story about Warren Moon, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you soon with more football history.